Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Under the Radar. This week is a super special week. As we're recording this, there's the huge server smash going on over in the other room, but it's the one between Emerald and Miller Miller's getting its butt kicked, but
Go
we
Emerald!
are here. We are enjoying our recording session with tea and crumpets, and we're going to talk about air stuff. And this week, Roids is MIA. He is not with us, but we do have a special guest who has been on once before. Go ahead and introduce yourself, special guest.
Hey guys, it's X. I've been on here before, so. Also, this time I'm really tired. I've been up for quite some time, so expect the things that come along with that.
Also, we fed him a lot of alcohol.
It's not true.
Sort of true.
Damn.
I also like how you started this and you're like, in the other room, they've got this server smash going on. So
This server smash thing. I don't
Fuck
know
that.
what they do or anything, but we're more important.
Way
So
more
there's like
important.
596 people in the next room, just all playing PlanetSide.
Throwing revive grenades.
throwing lots of grenades.
That's all I ever see when I tune into the stream is I just see a bunch of res grenades going off. And a bunch of people saying, OMG, they captured the point. Res grenades out. Such PlanetSide, much wow.
That is pretty much like high play. Maxes, NGs, and grenades. And heavies, but mostly grenades. Anyway, so I'm going to start us off this week in terms of topics. I want to cover an email from Fenchy, but before that I want to clarify Clintimus's email that I talked about last week. I wanted to say we sort of rushed through his email because it was so long, and we missed a couple of important points that sort of not huge, but it sort of clarified sort of where he was coming from. He wanted us to mention that he was more coming from the idea that Tomcats are in this game, so how can we combat them? How can we fight them? Rather than Tomcats are in this game, so we should just deal with it. And that was sort of the tone that we had, and it wasn't entirely correct. So thank you for having us clarify, Clintimus. Anyway, apart from that, I wanted to talk about Fenchy's email, which is very entertaining. So I'm gonna try to go through this as best I can. Hang on.
The suspense is killing me.
I'm sorry. So it begins. So the email is, "Hey, thanks for covering our comments and questions. It was pretty interesting to hear other suggestions, opinions, and just have an overview of what's up with the community at large. I like to keep suggestions simple and pointed without a huge amount of change to existing mechanics to increase the likelihood that it'll be taken seriously by developers and acted on, meaning fewer lines of code or modified in a shorter amount of time. But I have to agree, something drastic needs to be done about Tomcat. You know what? I've had alcohol now. Why can't the fucking things just be removed from the game? Coyotes are a more interesting mechanic, and that homing missile removes the adrenaline rush I know a lot of us get from a good fight nowadays. Finally, in your eyes, what's the single worst possible change SOE could make right now? Intoxicated infiltrator at the enemy warp gate, Fenchy." Thank you, Fenchy. Yeah, I mean, I honestly, for last week's podcast, I wasn't able to get all the recording footage because every time I left Warp Gate, I'd just be shot down by Tomcats. In fact, X, whenever we play together, just remind me to record so I'll have footage. Because I don't play the game enough anymore. But yeah, whenever I try to go out and solo in a Reaver, I think if you watch some of the footage from last week's podcast, it just, I'd go on one continent and get shot down by Tomcats, and then go on another continent and get shot down by Tomcats, and be like, I just want to Hornet tanks. Why is this so difficult?
I find it kind of funny because I haven't been playing too much, but when I have been playing, I'm not having troubles with Tomcats. I don't get it.
Maybe it's
I just
an
don't run
Emerald
into
thing.
anyone. I don't know. I'm not running into Tomcat squads, and I'm actually running into planes with coyotes, if anything, or rocket pods, and I haven't even encountered Tomcats for a while. I find that kind of weird.
The thing about Tomcats is that if you get attacked by more than one person with them, then you just pretty much can't win. Having said
definitely.
that, if you get attacked by one person with them, there are things that you can do. If you're getting into a duel against somebody who has Tomcats, you can rush them, and you can just keep yourself outside of their lock range. And if they try and lock you, pretty much just win because you're just gonna tear them up with your rotary or whatever.
Yeah, I actually did that. That like the one guy that I fought with Tomcats was a 1v1, and I charged him with my Hornets. And while I missed about 10 Hornet shots in a row because I charged him trying to get close for the Hornets, I kept him from shooting the Tomcats. So
Yeah,
it
it's a
probably
different
looked
form.
retarded from far off, like me trying to charge up and use these Hornets, and he's like missing Tomcats. So, but yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. There are things that you can do against Tomcats. I know a lot of people really hate them, but I don't see anything wrong with them, to be honest. I think that they're fine the way that they are in game. All right, maybe some things can be adjusted, but I think their existence is fine, and I think that the way that they work is fine. Ultimately, PlanetSide 2 is balanced around.
Scaling.
Yeah, exactly. The PlanetSide 2 is balanced around large numbers of fighters going up against one another, not these 1v1, 1v2s that ESF pilots in the game want to happen. That's what they want the air game to be. But the fact of the matter is there's always the possibility for larger fights to happen, and you either adapt by bringing in more numbers of your own, starting an outfit, joining an outfit, or switching your role. So you've got to do something. You're not going to get to play the way that you want to play all the time.
I would argue that even in the bigger fights, Tomcats are the weapon to have. I mean, after having done a couple of server smashes, I'd say that Tomcats were a huge part of every fight. They just let you chase people down and push the advantage a lot more.
It's true. They do. They do exactly do that. They are really good weapons. But there are things that you can do against that. Like in a 12, let's say in a 12v12 situation, somebody's locking onto you. If you've got good communication and your squadron plays cohesively, you can get people to clean you, and vice versa.
You know, this actually reminds me. There's something that's strangely relevant. Even even the fact that this is actually something from my distant PlanetSide past, but this is like what, February? What year was that? Was that 2013? Yeah, February 2013. So only a couple months after PlanetSide was released, and I was still like into flying and everything, but I basically had just like I started PlanetSide playing with a huge outfit of friends that I came over with from another game, so I actually didn't fly so much in the early days. And when I finally had to play more solo and fly on my own, I joined this group of guys. It was a flight outfit, like they were focused on flying, and it was the only one I could find for TR at the time, and it was led by a guy who was an ex-Air Force pilot. So he kind of wanted to bring like super serial type of Air Force, I guess, logistics to the whole thing, and see if that was fun. And I was like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. I'd love to try that. So that's what we did. And I remember one flight op we did, we were all required to have the Tomcats with us, and we flew into like two separate flights and all that, you know, and it was like super serious radio communications and all that. Probably wouldn't like it well today, but for the time it was actually pretty fun. And this was also when Tomcats were, you know, at their launch state way back when. And coordination with your wingmen back then was actually pretty fun, even if you were using Tomcats. But I think if we tried to do that again today, it wouldn't be as fun anymore. And I don't know exactly if it's because there's no novelty and they're boring and we've had so much time to hate Tomcats by now, or just the fact that their mechanics are different. But just something about how the air game is, even if you just take it now versus then, it's a lot more fun way back then than it is now.
You know, I wonder how much of this Tomcat hate comes from ESF pilots who like to go out and solo and get in the 1v1 fights. They want the duels, they want the really good pilot versus the really good pilot fight. They want that adrenaline rush that this email is talking about. I wonder how much of this Tomcat hate comes from those who go out with rotary afterburners, which is countered by Tomcats. They go out with the thing that gets killed by Tomcats, and then they complain against Tomcats. Ideally, Coyote missiles would counter, or do counter, Tomcats. If you've got the close range weapon versus the long-range lock-on, and you rush somebody who has Tomcats with your Coyotes, you're going to just win that because they don't have a secondary weapon, and you can just apply tons of DPS. You're up close, they can't lock, and you have access to 2 of your weapons. So if you go out with the counter to your counter, you're going to obviously win at that point. And even in a scaling situation, if you go in 12 versus 12, if you have 12 pilots with Tomcats and 12 pilots with Coyotes, and they all clash together, you have the 12 who go the close range fight, rush in, and what are the Tomcat pilots really going to do at that point?
Well, it wouldn't be a good idea to have 12 people running Tomcats in the first place. It's a support weapon. You're supposed to hang back and...
Yeah. But I'm saying in this theoretical situation, because the issue here with them is scaling. 1 versus 1, Tomcats can be dealt with. I don't know if a lot of pilots realize that you got to rush somebody who has Tomcats, but 1 versus 1 they can be dealt with. I don't really have a problem with Tomcats. It's just having the confidence to commit to a fight once it starts, and you can beat pretty much most Tomcat pilots that way. I've done it. I actually have a video of it, but I don't know. It's just one of those things. Everything is supposed to counter something else, and the Coyotes are supposed to counter the Tomcats.
Well, I am the type of solo pilot that you're talking about that runs out with afterburners, but I mained Coyotes for a while before I started to hate them, but essentially I don't think that the game should force you to constantly be playing with other people. Flying solo, you can do infantry solo, and that's fine. You're not going to be constantly dying. There are a lot of play styles you can adopt in infantry alone, and that's a-okay. And flying, though, if you're going 1v1 against a single person with Tomcats, then even with afterburner tanks, and if you're a decent pilot with, I would say especially in like a Reaver with the Vortec where you get that up-close damage, that works great too. But the air is just such an open area that it's really easy for a 1v1 to turn into a 1v2 or a 1v3. And if it's anything else than that one person with Tomcats, it just scales so well, that weapon, that there's nothing you can do no matter what your loadout is.
Yeah, that is true, but I'm going to stick to my point that you need to be able to adapt to that kind of situation. You've got your afterburners, turn tail and run. Find a way out of that situation when it turns bad. If it doesn't turn bad, stay around and fight your 1v1. You're right, because afterburner rotary can counter some of the Tomcats. It's just a matter of charging it. But once somebody else comes along, or once that burster max starts firing at you or something, you realize you can't win that fight, then you find a way out. You just adjust your playstyle. I feel like I lost you guys.
Oh, wow, my push-to-talk wasn't on. I'm sorry. Let's continue to the last part of the email. And Fenchy asked. That didn't happen.
I like that Hater didn't chime in when I said I feel like I lost you guys either. Just
I felt
silence.
like I timed out. I was like, wait,
I started checking my
are they
ping.
actually talking? It's like that awkward moment where everyone's looking at each other, waiting for someone else to take the first step.
I thought I
No,
disconnected.
You go through the door. You go through the door. No, you first. No, you.
Okay, yeah. Moving on with his email though.
Okay, sorry. So Fenchy asks, what's the single worst change SOE could make with the game right now? I feel like there's so many amazing possibilities with this.
That's the thing, is there's so many possibilities. If they just change one small thing, I don't care what it is. It can be the Tomcats. It could not be the it doesn't matter. If they just change one or two small details that are very strictly related to the air game, they'll fuck a lot of things up, because that's what they've always done. They've been like, oh, we can change the rotaries up a little bit. That won't hurt the gameplay, right? And look what it did. Maybe it had some small impacts here and there, but then you get all these small changes building up over a longer period of time, and the whole game has changed from over a 6-month period. The whole air game has changed, and it's based on cumulative small changes. In fact, I'd say that's actually had more impact than the whole ESF update ever did.
But the question here is, do you think it changed to what they wanted it to be?
What did they want it to be? I'm not quite sure they
Yeah,
even know
that's
the
what
answer to that
I'm asking.
question.
Do you think that the current air game is what SOE was trying to get it to from where it was?
I think that SOE's goal was to, with the air update, was to make the air more. It was two things. One is to make it more newbie friendly, and the other was to make it so that ESFs aren't jack of all trades. They have to specialize in different things by equipping different weapons. So Hornets are anti-vehicle, breakers or rocket pods are anti-infantry. They did do that, but and I would argue that I guess they made it more newbie friendly by making, Tomcats the great equalizer so that it doesn't really matter if you're that good.
And that's actually something I was going to talk about, was the fact that, okay, when the new ASF weapons and the big rebalance came in, but especially with the weapons, I was hopeful that that would force some sort of specialization to an extent of, I want a close range dogfighter, so I'm going to go with rotaries and coyotes, or I want the long range dogfighter, so I'm going to go with the default nose gun and tomcats, and have, the kind of not 100%, but some sort of rock paper scissors type stuff for the air game,
Mm-hmm.
But
Change add more depth to the style that you fly in
yeah,
would have been
and
great.
that's what I was hoping was going to happen. But honestly, now that I'm looking at it now, it hasn't done anything to that extent. Like, it doesn't matter if someone's using coyotes or tomcats; both are frustrating, and both are actually fairly effective at most ranges. Except coyotes are obviously not going to be effective at long range. But I mean, you get into any kind of hover duel, how many of those happen at extreme long ranges anymore? Very few. And then tomcats, I mean, they're ideal at long and medium range, but you can still use them at short range. So I don't know. I mean, just like there's not a huge disadvantage to choosing one over the other, as long as you do just a couple things right, which are really easy to do right. So you really have no reason to choose coyotes over tomcats or vice versa, other than personal preference. And then as far as air to ground goes, that's barely changed. Rocket pods are still rocket pods. Arguably, they're not used as much anymore, which I think is fine. But then you've got Hornets and then the anti-infantry nose guns, which seem to be more prominent these days, those nose guns, especially the Banshee. And air to ground is just basically how it's always been. Put your nose to the ground, kill a bunch of peasants, and you'll get shot down by a Sky Knight, and the circle is complete. Hooray.
I will say that the air to ground, after the air update, has become more difficult, because it used to take 2 shots with the rotary to take down infantry. Now it takes 3. It's amazing how much of a change that has made for me personally. There are so many times when I have strafed an infantry target, fired a volley at him, hit him twice, and months ago that would have been some experience for me. But now I have to take the time to pop into hover, turn around, and go back after him if I want him, or that leaves an opening for him to get away or survive. So I mean, you create those situations 1,000-fold per day, or over time. Then yeah, that turns out to be a pretty good change, a pretty good balancing change for infantry.
Yeah, but at the same time, part of that's due to, I'm not a big comment ginger, but part of that's due to just more people are more experienced now. The game's been out for a while. More people know how to combat air. Not everyone, because people still bitch about it, obviously, but, more people have the ability to.
I have to agree, though. The changes, just that one extra bullet. I actually have a video. This is like my little, when you view my YouTube channel, it's the video that starts playing thing. It's just of me listening to Smooth Criminal by Michael Jackson and going to Scarred Mesa Skydock and vortexing infantry like the Vortex and anti-infantry nose gun. Just over and over. And it's like, it's a pillar, it's up high, so if they lock onto you, you just descend. And it was ridiculous how well I was doing in that. And now that's just like, you cannot do that. You can barely even do that with the air hammer, really.
Yeah, and really, we shouldn't be able to take our anti-air nose gun out and mow down infantry like that. So it was a good change.
Yeah, that I agree with. I would say now, though, having that, if you want any ability to do air to ground whatsoever, I think the trouble with that is that, at least if you're a solo pilot, not only can the infantry damage you, but any enemy air that shows up just has such a massive advantage because they're going to alpha strike you because you're preoccupied with ground and you're not going to be able to know that they're coming. So you're just vulnerable to way, way, way more with the current, specialization of air to ground, that I would say that you can really only do air to ground effectively to fight where your team's winning anyway, or just an incredibly small, like 1 to 12 fight.
Yep, I love waiting until, well, I don't wait for this to happen, but if I happen to sign on like at 2 or 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, around there, oh man, Airhammer Afterburner, so many certs.
Oh yeah.
I'm just here for the farm.
But if I get attacked by any ESF, that's what the Afterburner is there for. I get out because I can't fight that.
Mm.
You can't pop into hover with an Airhammer and go toe-to-toe with a rotary. I mean, I guess maybe really good pilots with a degree of luck would be able to do that, but I think that's the fight. That's the kind of fight you should avoid. You should specialize for anti-infantry if you're going for anti-infantry, and avoid the things that counter you. And I think that's a big point to be made about any loadout. You can't pick whatever loadout you want and fly the same way that you fly with all your other loadouts and expect to do well just because you pick certain weapons. Whatever you choose, whether you're in an ESF or infantry or a ground vehicle, whatever you choose for your loadout, you've got to adjust your playstyle to match.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for me, like, here's another plug for my Hornets meta 2014. But I've just been going around with the rotary and Hornets everywhere. Doesn't matter what situation. I just throw myself into each situation with those two things and see how I do. And I get fucked a lot. I'll admit that, but there are times where I have a lot of fun trying to dogfight with Hornets, and then like I don't always clear the air, but in the case the air is clear, I can go right to ground and use Hornets against ground targets, and that's always fun. Like, I think that when you take Hornets, you're challenging yourself and also having fun with them.
That's a good way to look at it. I think also what you've just described is what a lot of PlanetSide players in general go through. Now, again, not just air, but a lot of PlanetSide players in general. They'll take a loadout out, and they'll go do whatever they do with it, whether it's infantry or air or whatever, and sometimes they'll just get completely wrecked with their loadout, and it feels like they're losing, or they're bad, or they're not doing well, or what have you. And other times they'll go out and they'll completely wreck. What's happening there is players are getting themselves into situations where their current loadout is, whenever they're doing poorly, where their current loadout isn't ideal or is countered, and they're getting countered and they're losing, and other times they're just stumbling into situations where they counter the situation. So then they do really well, and they kind of feed off of that, or I don't know, depending on the type of person they are, they might emphasize in their mind either the negative run or the positive run, and then change their loadout or stick with their loadout depending on it. And it can be a kind of confusing thing, and a lot of players don't realize that when you have a loadout, you've got to seek the situations that your loadout is good at, and then put yourself in those situations so that you can do well.
And then team up with other people who complement or supplement your loadout.
Exactly.
So you don't die as much. OMG, teamwork.
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically the fundamental flaw of those 1v1 ESF pilots who are crying about Tomcats because they want it to be what they want to be at all times, and they're not adjusting to the situation.
Again,
there are hundreds of other players on the map.
I don't think that there's no loadout really that will counter Tomcats. I would argue that Coyotes really don't, because of how well they scale. I think a good pilot with Tomcats would be a good pilot with Coyotes.
Tomcats counter Tomcats.
Yeah.
There we go. We fixed the air game. Good job.
No, but I mean for the simple reason that, like, if you were to get two people together, both of which are equally skilled, and have them duel, and one has Tomcats and one has Coyotes, I think the Tomcat one would win, simply because in a hover duel, it's easier to, you're flying backwards. It's easier to gain distance from the enemy than it is to close distance. And the Coyote person would pretty much have no option but to straight up rush, which would either the Tomcat would be able to lock on in time while he's just flying straight at you, or he'd just burn him with the nose gun while that's happening.
I don't know. In this hypothetical situation, there are a ton of assumptions being made there. I could make the exact same argument, saying that it's actually easier to close distance than it is to gain distance, And I could also say, well, two equally skilled pilots, if one is good at getting away, the other's going to be good at closing, and if one is good at holding his reticle still to lock, the other's good at dodging it.
There's too many factors, honestly.
Yeah, there's too
all
many
the
factors.
Loadouts. And
You
that's
can't
just
say
taken
that.
in a 1v1, there's still probably a big fight going on nearby you, and there's that one Skyguard who's like, ooh, look, they're dueling, let me fuck them up.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you're NC, you've got NC to worry about.
Right.
Yeah, fucking Vanguard AP. All right, we should move on to the next email, I think.
I agree.
Good discussion, but next email. Did you want to read it, Ginger, or should I?
I only had that one email as my topic, so...
Did you want to go over these last two? The orange and the blue one?
I wasn't planning to, but if you want to, then go ahead.
We'll go over those try to do those real quick, and then I'll move to my stuff, so... Okay. So I don't see who this is from. Do you know who this is from, Ginger? The orange one?
It says at the end, H4TZ not the worst.
Okay. Alright. Here's the email. So I'd like to start by saying you guys are some of the worst pilots in the game, and I'm beginning to question if you ever spawned in ESF before. Get good 2014. Ignoring that, I'd like to give a brief story and then ask a question. I always credit Ginger in teaching me how to fly months ago when I wobbled at the end of my reverse maneuver like a baby deer after birth. I like that analogy. At this time, he told me that a pilot by the name of Argatar on another server had mentored him. Back then, it was impossible to comprehend that there had been another server than Connery, so that meant little to me. But now, months later, I've been asking myself a question. Does the air game revolve in generations? From Argatar to the Flight Club days to the Lock-on Coyote era that we are now in, I feel that the air game goes through different phases. I learned from watching videos and Ginger's instruction. The people I watched stopped flying, and even Ginger took a break. So my question is, does the air game have phases, and if so, what has been the most interesting of the phases?
I'll interrupt. I lied. This is actually from MK Grider.
Okay.
Sorry.
What he said. Okay, so does it have phases? I guess so, yeah.
I'm going to say that what he's describing is just the meta.
Yeah.
The meta shifts. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can call it phases. I mean, it's just another word for saying how the game is being played in the most ideal way. Things become popular because they're effective. And then whatever counters what's popular right now then becomes popular because it counters what's popular. And so, yeah, it does kind of go in these cycles. Counters to counters to counters to that counter to that counter to that counter. And, different tactics and ways of flying, ways of playing, and different things come up, like the Vanu Scythe Cloud that we have on Connery sometimes. That's another part of the meta, another part of air phases and things like that. So yeah, it does kind of go around in phases. As far as generations are concerned, like, I don't know if you can really say that one pilot bestows his piloting knowledge onto one, and then the next generation gets that knowledge, and the next generation.
Yeah.
I guess there is
really
a little
like
bit of that. No, I don't think it really goes. There's kind of a little bit of that, but that's just players teaching players.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for the most, I mean, there's like a few like big key phases, I guess you could say. Like the first would just be the initial few months after launch, where people were learning, and when the reverse maneuver became prominent, and then everyone was like, "Oh, that's good. Let's use that. Now we got to counter that with more reverse maneuvers." And that was kind of how it was for quite a while. And then, I guess I can only speak for Emerald, but at the time this was Watterson, so I can only speak for Watterson. It was about the time when I joined NUC, is what I'd say. Yeah, about the time I joined NUC is when things kind of started changing, because I joined NUC as I was one of the last prominent active pilots of TR to finally give in to joining NUC, which was the only guys who could run an air squad for TR at the time. So about that time is when you see Prey got big, and Prey became the prominent NC pilot outfit, and then Zaps kind of came as a VS, and then you have NUC as TR. So we kind of went from the whole YOLO solo pilots of the reverse maneuver days to the putting all the good pilots in a squad together and throwing them at each other days.
Yeah, I would say in terms of phases, I think maybe what he's talking about, he could be talking about the metagame, and then he could also just be talking about sort of the server community as well.
That too.
Which has changed on its own as well. It's been affected by the metagame too, but just on Connery, just the way that yeah, I'd say about a year ago that it used to be sort of a very tight knit. I would actually almost go so far as to say actually elitist community. It wasn't elitist in the sense that it was, woe to everyone else except the people who know how to know their reverse maneuver, but all the good pilots kind of knew each other and had each other added on friends lists and stuff. But things have obviously changed since then. Connery's a very big server.
Yeah. And Watterson's changed a lot. It's gone through its phases. But I think it's kind of, I think it follows the phases of the meta game, what Watterson went through, just because it went from so much YOLO solo to big-ass gank squads roaming each other, trying to gank each other, and then when all that kind of died down, it was smaller gank squads, and then that's when the new weapons came out, so now people are experimenting with those, and then we kind of eased into what we have now, which is just lock-ons galore.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would say the community's changed over time. I think he asked sort of what the best phase was. Was that?
Oh, did he? Let's see.
What has been the most interesting phase?
I'd say
right at the start. I'd say right at the start when nobody knew how to fly. You couldn't even learn how to fly in the warp gate because vehicles were still exploding in the warp gate. So anybody who pulled an ESF had to learn the hard way, man. You go out there, you learn how to control that thing. You crash your first ESF just like everybody else who started flying an ESF did.
Before we had a virtual reality room, we had to practice the reverse maneuver in the warp gate.
No, even then, there wasn't even a reverse maneuver. It came out shortly thereafter. Yeah. And it was like, whoa, that's freaking amazing. You must be extremely good to be able to do that, because that looks like, that's so elegant, that's so graceful, and it's so effective. How can you be that good? Not everyone does it.
Do a barrel roll.
It actually kind of reminds me, I would say, sort of the same thing for League. I played League before there was entirely a clearly defined meta when Warwick and Nunu were the only junglers, and jungling was still kind of like, what? What are you doing? You're gonna make me solo top?
Yeah.
It just was more different to when everyone had no idea what they were doing. It was certainly interesting, and I think the same could be said for PlanetSide.
Yeah. I don't know if that's necessarily the most interesting phase, but it's the one to me that's fairly memorable. The very early parts of the air game.
No, it was definitely good, but for me, my most memorable days were in Nuck, because we had the most interesting fights, just fighting against prey and zaps all the time. It was very cutthroat, very competitive, and because I never thought I'd actually care for that kind of gameplay, and then I did, and then I liked it. I mean, it was memorable and interesting.
I think it just comes down to personal preference for everybody to answer that question.
Definitely.
All right. Hater, did you want to begin your topic?
Let's do it. All right. So, once again, we have another thread on redditside calling out pilots and bitching about them, and extremely controversial. And this one, actually, I guess you can't call too controversial because it has all the upvotes. Controversial means it's got a lot of upvotes and downvotes. This one has 80% upvotes, which I find funny.
Yeah, Redditside.
It should be. Yeah, redditside loves us. But what I found, okay, I'll say what I said earlier, but let me read the post off. It should be on the front page of Reddit still right now, but the title was, "Decided to no longer bother about the air game. Too many Sky Knights in the skies. Not enough pilots of my level to compete with." From that title alone, I was like, lol, what? But let me read off the actual post real quick. So, just putting this out here. I think the air game isn't worth the bother at the moment. There are far too many Sky Knights in the skies of PlanetSide 2 to do anything. I've been trying my damned hardest to get a hang of the ESF air game for 6 months now. I've only won 10 duels out of about 150, 8 of which were won by ramming my opponent. The PlanetSide 2 ESF game needs to change. It should be attracting new potential pilots instead of discouraging them. The whole just learn to fly speech by the established elite is representative of that discouragement. Okay, my first response to this was, okay, this is making it sound like Sky Knights, quote unquote Sky Knights, outnumber the average pilot now, which I find quite absurd to think about if you're taking things seriously. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, this is Miller. I know Cobalt has a reputation for having a lot of really good pilots, so maybe Miller's similar, but on Connery, no. There is that really good pilots are a pretty huge minority.
Yeah.
Sky
So,
Knights are a pretty huge minority.
Yeah. Maybe there's some server differences, but I think the whole term Sky Knight or Sky God was coined for those elitist few, keyword few, that were supposedly ruining the air game for everyone else. And now now they're saying, oh, it's the majority that's ruining the air game, which I find just a very strange way to put it. And I would consider it wrong based on my experience on Emerald, but I'll just put that out there. But I was going to go over a couple other comments in this thread that I think might have some good discussion material, so let me pull some of these up. Okay, the first one from The Blazer. His comment is, the air game needs a design overhaul because, or the air game needs a design overhaul when new players need to be mentored instead of learning from a tutorial or from experience. Lock-ons and other non-nose gun weapons are so badly implemented that the game was better when players restrained themselves from using them. And good pilots need to offer themselves as mentors on redditside because they believe that it's the only good way to make the air game work. The problem is we don't need to nerf skill or remove lock-ons, we need a general air overhaul.
Okay, I kind of halfway agree with this one, because at the same time, the fact that you spent 6 months trying to duel people, the best way to get better at flying, if it's something you really want to do, is to spend a lot of time in VR working on the maneuvers. But, that's boring. That's obviously only people who really want to learn to fly are going to do that. So that certainly makes it less accessible. But I don't think that it's outside the realm of something that could be taught in a tutorial, if there were to be one. There are a lot of YouTube videos that have covered it on simple terms. There's no reason why this won't happen, but there's no reason why there can't be a simple game reverse maneuver tutorial. It's just like learning to ride a bike. You have to learn something new, but it's an interesting mechanic, and it's worth learning.
Yeah. Hell, I'll even throw it out there right now. I'll create a tutorial for SOA to use in their game tutorial. I'll do the voiceover of the guy who tells you how to do the reverse maneuver. That should help, right?
You were in a restricted area.
I don't know. At the same time, though, the air game is extremely competitive. I think maybe the people who are saying these things, these people who want to get into flying but can't, might actually have a valid point. Because even average pilots are going to thrash completely new pilots. So if you're going up as a new pilot and you've got resources and nanites and things like that to worry about, so you've got limited number of ESF. It was worse before, don't get me wrong, but if you've got limited number of resources to work with and you're trying to go out there and you're getting hammered not only by the people out there who are already established, so you're dealing with aces first of all. They're real troublesome. They're just gonna wipe you off the map. And then you've got the average pilots who are gonna probably put up a fight and probably take you out. And then you've got all the ground stuff that you have to worry about too. I can actually see for a new pilot playing air being extremely difficult.
Definitely, yeah.
Just run
with an unserved plane.
Having said that, though, I don't mean to bash this guy or anything, but 6 months trying one thing and failing repeatedly, you might just want to evaluate whether this is something you want to be doing.
Yeah, or maybe you're doing it wrong. Like, that sounds mean to say, but
I know. Maybe
you
maybe
gotta
there's
learn eventually what's going wrong. If you've had that many duels, yeah, maybe you've lost most of them. Hell, I've probably lost quite a few a majority of the duels I've had over my career, but I've also had a shit ton of duels. But it just goes to show, like, are you learning from this, or are you just kind of throwing yourself at it and getting mad about it?
Yeah, we don't know his situation. We don't know if he goes in, loses, analyzes what happened, and then tries to correct that, or if he's just performing the exercise where he tries the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. We don't know how he's approaching this in particular. And because we don't know that, I'm going to put a tip out there to kind of help him and players in his situation. I've always maintained, and I haven't said this yet anywhere, like, not that I can think of, not like in a video or written it down in a blog post or in a forum and thing. So I'm saying it here, and I'll probably say it again later, and maybe talk about it more later. But I think that one of the most important things about learning to fly and there's more than just keeping your aircraft in the air. One of the most important things about staying alive and being effective in the air doesn't have anything to do with the air at all. It's the ground game. You've got to look at your minimap. You've got to see where the lines are drawn, where the battle lines are drawn. You've got to see where you've got your line of tanks, where the enemy's got their line of reinforcements coming out. You've got to see where turrets are being manned. You've got to see where burster maxes are. The ground game determines where you can fly. And only once you've got a feel for what's going on below you can you begin to pay attention to what's in front of and above you. So if you're not paying attention to that, then really you're going out into a minefield without knowing where the mines are, without paying attention to where any of the mines are, because there are hot zones in the air everywhere, all over the frickin' place. Because there are places that are being covered by flak, there are places that are being covered by other ESFs, there are places that are difficult to fly in because there's a Liberator flying way up at the flight ceiling who's aiming a shredder down at ESFs looking specifically for you. The whole sky is trapped. It's just very extremely dangerous. And on top of that, you've got people in burster maxes below and flak turrets and even AP tanks on hillsides and things like that that are firing at you. People are good these days. You've got BR-100s locked down in Prowlers who are using that two-shot to take out ESFs and stuff like that. There's a lot to really worry about. So mastering the ground game, or at least getting an idea of how PlanetSide flows from capture point to capture point, from base to base, and where enemies are going to be, where they are now, and where they were, maybe not necessarily in that order, but knowing how the game flows on the ground below you is a huge part of staying alive. So if you've been doing this for 6 months and you keep getting shot down, you keep losing these duels or what have you, learn the other aspects of the game or incorporate them into your flying, and that should, for most people I would hope, vastly improve your ability to stay alive and be effective in an ESF.
For me, I'll just quote Archer. It's called situational awareness. Have you heard of it?
Yeah,
but
I mean,
but you tell somebody like that who's like, man, I've been playing for 6 months and I can't. Yeah. I've been playing for half a year and I can't get this right. And you tell them situational awareness, noob. That doesn't help them at all.
Well, it's a joke, but I mean,
yeah, no, I get it. I know.
So yeah, no, I totally agree. Like when you think about it, all of the muscle memory that goes into the reverse maneuver and hover fighting and stuff, that's one very specific part of flying. It's when you need to lock down and kill everything that's attacking you. And you can't always even do that. It's, because it immobilizes you. It's actually like locking down in a Max or a Prowler. And I guess it's not really used in that situation, but you stop moving and start fighting the people who are on you. If you have situational awareness, you really shouldn't be... You should know what you're going to do that will and won't get you into that position. So if you don't know how to do it, and you're using the skills that you have from playing infantry to pay attention to the map and pay attention to the ground and all the stuff you just mentioned, you shouldn't always be putting yourself into a situation where you even need to hover fight anyway. Just use your teammates, know what's around you, and you can still get stuff done. You're not going to be hitting your head against a wall for half a year.
Yeah. I got another comment from the thread that I think is a good segue for this, so let me go ahead and read that. And I think it's the most upvoted comment in this entire thread, so you'll see why with good reason. This is from some guy 720. He says, I guess the problem for me is that it's not fun to get good at flying. I didn't start as the best infantryman, the best sniper, or the best tank commander, but it was fun enough to begin with that I kept playing and naturally developed relevant skills. Being good at flying is probably fun, but getting there is not, and I'm not playing this game for any reason other than to enjoy myself, so I just don't fly. Not to mention the frustration of not being able to bind the x-axis of my mouse to yeah. SOE, please. But anyways, I like the way he just says it. He's just like, it's not fun for me to learn to fly, so I just don't learn to fly and I don't worry about it. Like, not enough people have that attitude, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't want to put the time in, then, I mean, sure, go up and use, something like Tomcats every now and then. That's what a lot of people do, just as, I kind of getting bored of infantry, so I'll go try my luck in the air. But, don't complain about the air game if you're not going to bother learning it.
Well, there's kind of two sides to that coin. I mean, for one, it's that, it's not fun to learn, and if you don't want to develop the relevant skills, then don't bother. Like, you don't have to. But at the same time, there are people who do want to, and it's probably harder than it should be for them to get into it. So, I mean, the argument kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, I like that comment. It's got a lot of upvotes and stuff like that, but I don't actually think it's relevant in this particular discussion because he's saying, I don't fly because I don't find it fun. That makes perfect sense, so don't fly. No big deal.
Yeah.
But that doesn't apply to the people who want to learn to fly and are having extreme difficulty.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that pretty much sums it up. I mean, I had a lot of fun learning to fly. Every time I was able to use the skills that I honed in VR to do something cool on live, that was like the best feeling in the world for me. So, I mean, just different things for different people.
I have a short story relevant to this. I was flying my Reaver nighttime battle over Parasham Station, and it was a pretty big fight, as Parasham Station can get sometimes. A lot of anti-air, a lot of air. ESF versus ESF squadrons, not necessarily squadded up, but like 8 Reavers versus like 8 sides just happened to clash in the same spot. The sides kind of overextended, and we ended up cleaning them up because we had all kinds of support from the ground and stuff. So we won that. And before that, though, we were, of course, fighting in hover duels and things, and I took out this one scythe pilot, and then I returned to the warp gate to reload and repair. And I get a message from him, and he complains to me. He's not like bitching at me or anything, but he complains to me. He's like, man, I just can't get this. He goes, I hate ESF versus ESF fights because I can't get the dueling down. It's also disorienting, and hovering is so difficult to do. It's also spinny, and things go upside down. He's like, I just can't do it. And he seemed like really discouraged by it. So I sent him a message back saying, well, then don't do it. You don't have to. There's nothing that says you ever have to engage an ESF with your ESF. And I told him that you can you can learn this later, but first you've got to learn to be effective in an ESF. And I didn't say that in so few words, but the point that one of the tips that I gave him was to bring out another scythe. This time, look on the mini-map, see where his friendly ground is. Fight as much as he can, and whenever he starts taking damage, instead of feeling the need or feeling the pressure or some sort of, or instead of feeling the onus to go in and fight and start a hover duel, which you're not good at, you're going to lose, instead of doing that, turn around and fly behind your friendlies. Fly into safe air so that you've got flak protecting you and all kinds of stuff. You can disengage, you can repair, then you can come back in and start up another fight. Get some shots off on a ground target or maybe some air targets or whatever, and if you take damage, turn around, turn tail and run again, and just keep doing that. I told him that's you can be effective in an ASF and you never have to hover duel if you don't want to. And a few minutes later, he sends me into hotel and he's ecstatic. He's like, I've kept my scythe. He's like, I can't believe it. This is really amazing. He's like, thank you so much. I can't believe I'm having this much fun in my ESF. And that's the tone. I don't remember his exact wording, but that's the tone that came across whenever he was telling me this. And that goes along with what I was saying for the newer pilots learning what's going on the ground and stuff. This guy felt like he had to compete with aces, or in order to be effective or to be valid, that's a good word for it. In order to be valid, he felt like he had to engage in this part of the game that he didn't like or that he wasn't good at. And I guess I just opened up a door for him, telling him, no, just change your playstyle up and you can continue to fly and you don't have to do the stuff that you don't like. And I'm hoping from that point he eventually did go on to learn how to hover duel and things like that. But for any pilots who are having trouble with that, just go along with that. Follow your faction. Fly around behind friendlies and use their support. Learn how to fly that way.
Also, situational awareness. Related.
I actually had this. This is actually kind of relevant to what's happening right now, but I had a situation on live where Don Alfredo Sauce's Zerg started, turning towards me and chasing me. And I afterburned to a major NCTR biolab fight that just happened to be there and started flying around the bottom. And none of them, they're not that good. So they all, they couldn't acquire a lock on me. And the flak that was just going up from both factions killed so many people. And I ended up taking out a good chunk of their air squad, which I felt pretty happy about.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Anyways, sort of relevant, mostly me bragging. Anyway, continued on. Was there anything else on that, Hater?
I was gonna go over one more comment, maybe. I was gonna say first that like I can kind of relate to that story, but in the reverse. Like I was a pilot from day one, and then it was like about a month or two before I had left for boot camp, and I was just kind of like, I just want to do something different for a little while on PlanetSide. So I tried to pick up sniping, or just infiltrator in general, but more specifically doing the sniper stuff. And I like went through all the guns that I had, and I was just like, none of these fit my playstyle. I play this like I used to play Halo PC way back in the day, and that's an aggressive sniper, which is not very ideal, but I found it fun. Even though I fucked up a lot, and I still do. I'm not that great, but I like it's fun for me to do it that way. But none of the guns really fit that, so I was getting frustrated, and I was about to just say, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to take a break from PlanetSide and not play until probably after I'm out of boot camp. So, but someone told me about the SAR 42 and how it's basically the Rams, but with all the short range scopes. And I mean, because I'd never really played Infiltrator before, I had no idea. This seemed like a pretty simple thing to anyone who plays Infiltrator or any infantry. It wasn't for me. And so when I figured that out, the SAR just like fit my playstyle perfectly. That was the first and so far only infantry weapon I have an Araxium on, because like it just fit for me, and I had so much fun playing with it. So I mean, it just goes. I mean, it can go both ways. That's just kind of my story to counteract that, I guess. Okay.
Counteract what? Hold on, I'm not clear on that. Counteract what exactly?
Not counteract it, but just like compliment, I guess. I don't know what the word is I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. To supplement.
But you were talking about a guy who was having frustration with the air game. You helped him. You told him how to hopefully make it better, and it was better for him. I was having frustration being an infiltrator. Someone told me about the SAR 42. I loved it. I had a better time as an infiltrator.
You've got to enjoy the gameplay in any game that you play.
Exactly.
And playstyle is extremely important. That's one thing that I want to drive home in this particular podcast is playstyle. We talked about it earlier in dealing with loadouts. We talked about it now whenever dealing with how to learn to fly and be effective. And we talked about it with infantry. Playstyle. Try different playstyles and match your playstyle to what you're using.
Indeed.
All
okay,
right.
I think we got a little time, or do we want to wrap it up?
I think we have time for story time. Yeah, no, we got time for story time.
Okay.
I at least have a story. I don't know if you guys do.
Before we go into that, I'll just say that redditside thread, it has a lot of other good comments. I had a bunch of others I was hoping to get to, but I was pretty sure we weren't going to get to them all. But I know there's other good points raised in that thread. I've read most of them, so I'm not trying to be biased with the ones I picked. We just don't have time to cover everything. So for anyone listening, calling me out for being a biased son of a bitch elitist pilot scum, well, you're probably right, but you can suck it. We have time to keep two.
Alright, story time. This one is of me being kind of a dick, but it's funny, so whatever. So, there are two prefaces to this story. The first is that I'm in a major undergrad class. It's in the Kane Lecture Hall in University of Washington, and this is the biggest lecture hall in Seattle. It seats like, oh god, I don't know how many hundred people. I'm gonna say I'm gonna shoot 400. It could be more or less. I'm not sure. It's a huge hall, and in this class, you have to purchase a clicker, and what you purchase it for is essentially for attendance. Basically, you are quizzed on questions during the lecture, and you click into the answer of the question, and if you get it right, you get a point, which is actually a cool idea. But I've had them done in classes where it's not for grade, you're just graded on attendance based on whether you clicked in, which is incredibly stupid because it's a huge lecture hall, and you know, in a college class, you're supposed to not have attendance rules. People will show up to your lectures if you're a good lecturer. That's how it works. But they had all of these 400 people buy $50 clickers. Can't imagine why. To make money. So you have to click in for the questions. That's how it works. And
the story is boring.
Rude. So the other preface.
No, I'm just kidding.
This one's shorter.
I'm actually finding it quite interesting. Okay. I'm gonna keep talking for just a little bit. All right, I'm done. Go on.
Got it. Preface number 2 is that in this lecture hall,
this isn't even the story. This is just the preface.
Yes, I'm getting to the story. Jesus, can I just?
Does it involve dinosaurs or girls?
It involves girls, but
not dinosaurs.
Not dinosaurs. Okay, preface number 2 is that in this hall, to the answers to the clicker questions, he will call on an individual person out of this 400-person lecture hall and have them answer the question. And if you don't answer it, you lose your clicker points for that day. So, which is ridiculous. You can imagine a movie theater that's 4 times the size of a movie theater and calling on a random person in the crowd and not even being able to hear their response and him being like, "Oh, good, great." So it's really stupid. But basically, we had a clicker question in this class. We were going through a couple in a series of them. I was sitting in a place. I had a pair of sorority girls on my left and a pair of sorority girls on my right. And after the pair of sorority girls on my right was a single dude sitting at the aisle seat, and then it was the aisle. So from the right, it was aisle seat dude, pair of sorority girls, and me. And you're supposed to answer the clicker question on your own and then turn to your partner, one of your partners, and talk to them. And so we answer the questions on our own, and then it opens it up for us to turn to partners. And, you know, the sorority sister close to the aisle seat guy should turn to him, and the sorority sister on my right should turn to me. No, both the sorority sisters on either side of me immediately start talking to each other, leaving me and aisle seat guy, just sitting there to think, which is great, okay. Cool. Now we don't get that opportunity. Now we might get it wrong. And then, so I click in again, and then I just wait. And then once we're 2/3 of the way through, the sorority sister on my right turns from her friend and goes to me and goes, "Oh, what did you think for this one?" And I'm like, well, it's C. And she's like, "Oh," and then she turns back to her friends and goes, "Oh, he said it was C." And they're like, "Oh, okay, click. And I'm like,
I like that.
Oh, I get it. I'm the nerd now. I am a resource. Okay.
I am a resource.
So the next clicker question comes up, and I'm like, okay, well now chick on my right's probably going to talk to me about it because, you know, she wants to get the right answer. So I click in, and then he turns it open to discussion. Nope, they immediately start talking to each other again. I'm like, okay. So 2/3 of the way through, a sorority sister girl turns to me, and she goes, "Oh, well, what did you think for this one?" And the correct answer is D. I'm like, "Oh, it's obviously C." And she's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Oh, definitely." She's like, "Oh," and she turns back to her friends. "He said it was C." Oh, click. And you know, that should have been it. That should have been the joke. You know, fun times. I've been wronged, and I burned them for it. Then something magical happens. Professor goes up to his podium and goes, "All right, so do we have an Andrew Newton in the hall?" Which happens to be my name. And I go, "Yes, that's me." And he goes, "Well, what did you have? What did you and your partner have for this one?" And I said, "Oh, well, me and my partner decided that the correct answer is D, and this is why." And I made sure to explain why it was D and not C. And he's like, "Okay, great, thank you. That is the correct answer." And the sorority sister on my right turns to me like, you were supposed to feed me the right answers. This isn't how this works." I'm like, "Oh, changed my mind."
Don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Anyway, that is my story.
Okay. I don't know what to make this story yet. I'm tired. Something is amiss here.
Something is rotten in the
No.
Scotland.
No.
Shit, what
No.
is that line? There's
So
something.
I'm gonna analyze this for a second. She turns to you. She asks you for the answer. She turns to her friend. All right. So you feel like the nerd that the hot girls ask to get the right answer, and you're there for nothing else. So immediately for the next question, you turn spiteful as fuck and give him the wrong answer.
I would have done
Yes.
the same thing.
And then
Not because they're calling you the nerd, but because they're not doing their work on their own.
They didn't call him a nerd though. He just took their actions.
It was assumed.
Yeah, he just took their actions to mean, all right, I'm the nerd that they get their answers from. I mean, I don't blame him. He's probably right. That is probably what they were doing. But I don't know. Okay, I think this is where I'm getting hung up. I'm getting caught up here. It's just the level of spite that suddenly burst forth from you as a result of this.
It's
this,
not so much
story.
that it burst forth so much as I hate college students.
It's not the D, it's the C.
I'm trying to think about how I would have handled that situation. Not actually being in that situation, I don't know.
Like I said, it was a bit of a dick move, but I no regrets.
No, it's definitely funny.
Anyway, did you have a story, Hater?
Not really. We don't have much time, and it's not a good story, so...
I have a follow-up to your story, though.
Okay. I know
I'm
I'm a bad person. God,
No.
why are you doing this to me?
No, I know both those girls.
Okay.
And I didn't realize it was you that they were talking about at the time. But the one who turned to you and asked the question and turned back, she told me that she turned away so quickly was because she was afraid of getting lost in your deep, piercing gaze. And she found you to be an incredibly handsome individual, and she was really nervous about talking to you, so she stuck to talking to her girlfriend, which was a lot more comfortable. She was hoping you would make a move, but you didn't. Instead, you kind of just screwed her over.
See, I know you're lying because
See?
a sorority sister would have made up a way better lie than that. Like, let's be honest.
I don't know, man. He brings up a valid perspective.
I don't know. Are you a good-looking gent? I don't know.
Okay, well, I would say yes. I mean, I think so.
Cool, man.
Anyway.
Good job.
Yeah, so it was actually because I was so attractive and I'm an asshole. GG.
That's not what I said at all. Man.
Well,
Implied.
basically summarizing it.
My story wasn't even true. I don't know those girls.
Maybe you do. Maybe you've known them all along.
Okay, we need to wrap it up. No
Yeah, we
more
do.
about
All right,
just failed
so
sorority
email
attempts.
us with topics. UTR podcast.
Are you sure the podcast just got good?
Email us with topics, utrpodcast@gmail.com. And we will talk about them. And if we don't, I will send you an email with my opinion and stuff. And I know we didn't get to every email we got this week, and apologies to those we did not hit. But I did respond to every email individually, so no guilt. So you'll always get something out of emailing us. Check out X's channel. It will be in the description of this video. And that is it. Thank you for joining us.
Playstyle people.
And
OP.
we'll see you under the radar. I just kind of thought of a story too. It's probably not that interesting, but I did have to pretend to be a pregnant woman in our EMT class scenarios day.
Okay, this is what
That
bloopers
was
are for.
interesting.
Please continue.
I will say no more on the subject, but let's just say Hater as a pregnant woman is very, very bad.
I'm sure it was super
Wait.
attractive.
Bad like how? Like you just suddenly get this wild streak or something?
Oh, mama.
Just
Mama.
Just imagine me saying, I feel like I have to push. Oh, it's coming out.
I have the
I'm not gonna
weirdest boner
imagine.
right now.
I'm not gonna imagine you saying that. It's not gonna happen.
Too bad, because I just said it. Except I had more heart in it. I had to make them believe I was actually a pregnant man giving birth and that I needed medical attention.
Why? what fucking kind of training is this?
Medic training?
Be prepared for any situation, huh?
Yes.
Wait, if someone's getting birth, you have to know how to receive the baby. Like if you're just walking around in some foreign country and someone's like, "Help!"
Sure, I highly doubt that'll ever fucking happen to an Air Force medic, but it's possible.
Wow,
Apparently.
they really train you for anything.